And welcome back to the British and Irish Eagles podcast. I'm your host, Liam O'Neill, and of course, I'm back this week because it was a winning podcast. I know I must have got some stick, and I did listen to some of that stick last week by not being on the losing podcast, and it has become a little bit of a theme. I'm not ignoring that fact. I'm not hiding from it. I would say 85 to 90% of the time there's been real reasons, and maybe one of the 10 there wasn't one, I don't know, but certainly wasn't any reason for me not to be on it last week. I'm looking forward to getting back in the hot seat talking birds. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Of course, I'm joined by Phil Mount Stevens. I'll get your opinion on the win in a second, Phil. We also have Tony Brereton, so the Three Musketeers are back at it this week, which is great. Excited about that, and we have a special guest interview with another Tony, Uncle Tony, Tony Fletcher, live from Philadelphia. Well, not live, pre-recorded actually, from Philadelphia, where he's going to give us his takes on the ground. What's he hearing among the media on the ground, the radio stations, the TV channels? What are they saying down the local bar and the barber shop when you're picking your newspaper up? What's it like to live in Philadelphia at the moment? Because we know that city bleeds green. So that's going to be really fun. Listen out for that after we do the recap of the Saints. So I think I'm just going to jump on into it, Phil. But before I do, uh, brief thoughts on the Eagles 15-12. We're not going into too much detail. How are you feeling? Relieved, excited, nervous? All of the above?
First off, stole my line. I was all ready to be built up to kind of go, and it's a winning podcast and the impact. So damn you for taking that away from me. The title of the podcast is Bulldozing in the Bayou, and I think that pretty much sums it up. It was a hard, heavy, ground out win, and I feel relieved more than anything. I think we pulled out the GIF at the end of the podcast in the WhatsApp group. I'm so looking forward to watching the Eagles play. I'm going to kill myself / Sirianni, and then we won at the end, and that is just it's great. You rather it would be like that every time, rather than we're in the lead like we were against the Falcons, and then suddenly at the end it's a devastating defeat. But at the same time, there are lots of things to take out of this win, I think, and there are lots of positives that seem to be, as you've noticed if you've looked around on Twitter and everything, all the expert film tape digesters, the people who look at it, no one's really coming out and saying anything much about the bad stuff other than the obvious play calling side of things, which we'll get into. But generally, I think everyone has seen through that and is looking at the good points, and the good points are very much some sort of big fat stakes to get your teeth into for this podcast. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Oh, mate, me too. And I think just one thing to touch on that, a lot of people seem to forget that going into this game, the Saints had just popped 90 points on their previous two opponents. They looked like the most potent offense in the league. Carr's playing lights out, Olave lights out, Kamara dominating on the ground, good on the defensive side of the ball. So this was not a foregone conclusion, and a lot of Eagles fans listening in had worries before this game. And let me just remind you that the Eagles did come away with the W. This would have been a lot worse had they lost, and we would be feeling a lot worse about it, but we didn't. A bit like the old Manchester United team back in the day, Phil. Even when you're not playing well, still grinding out a win, right? That was a staple of the Sir Alex Ferguson dynasty. Comparing.
It's a symbol of championship teams now. I think, like, you're right, it's come from the Manchester United era, but now that's basically used as the marker. Like when people start believing in a team's going to win a championship, that's the one thing that usually builds the foundation. It's winning ugly. It's winning when it matters and dragging it out when you really need to.
Absolutely. And look, I don't think either of us were saying that we believe the Eagles are going to go win the Super Bowl this year. Yeah, I'm certainly not there Yeah, I think there's a lot of improvements we still need to see. There's a lot of healthiness that needs to happen in terms of the team as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. But the Chiefs are 3-0, and they don't look that good either. They barely beat the Bengals. And they didn't beat the Falcons by that much either. No, I know that
I
the
wouldn't say
Falcons
they
are a
don't
little
look
over.
too good. I think it's more that they've come very close to not winning the games is the main thing. I think they've looked pretty good. I mean, you've got Worthy, and that has looked fantastic, and the players they've got, I think, and with when you've got Mahomes at the
Yeah,
helm.
Travis Kelsey hasn't. He's gone missing.
Mm, not to divert too much with him, I think it's a lot. I do believe very much that they almost like keep him on ice until the last stage of the season. If you look at his stats last season, it's very mediocre for the first sort of 15 weeks. But coming
Interesting.
into the season and the playoffs, he absolutely explodes. And I think you can never read too much into what his early season form. You don't want to break Kelsey before the playoffs, man. But yeah,
No, that's
I
true.
think it's
Oh
more
well,
they've
far too
come
much
close.
time for a different type of Kelsey on this
Yeah,
podcast,
obviously,
for
yeah.
sure, and that's my fault for taking us down that rabbit hole. All right, let's give you some news. The reason you haven't heard from Tony Burton yet is he's having IT issues up in wee body Scotland. He's currently doing the turn it off and on again, uh, wrap it around, tap the screen, fiddle with the Wi-Fi router, and we're hoping he is able to come in at some point, and join the party. So news, a lot of news going on. Myself and Tony Fletcher get into this later on in our interview around Sirianni, and it's. I think we'll pick this up more in the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy, Phil. But we do need to touch on the the big news going around Eagles at the moment is Sirianni and his play calling. So let's hold that back to the next segment of the podcast. A lot of news concerning the Eagles' health coming into this weekend's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it's not good, Phil. If I'm honest, Devontae Smith left the game with a concussion. You saw his face on the sideline; he looked like he was ready to come back and do some damage. So I'm looking forward to when he does come back. It is the bye week next week. The Eagles are probably thinking, better be safe than sorry. And he didn't suit up again today. It's Thursday, which normally doesn't bode well for a Sunday game if they did not practice on a Thursday. If we see limited or full practice tomorrow, then that'll be a good sign. Maybe limited, I don't know. I'm not expecting Devontae Smith to suit up this coming Sunday. AJ Brown said that he was looking at 2 weeks. This could be his third week out. Plus the bye week means he could be out for 4 full weeks. Including the bye. He did not practice today as well. Not a good sign for the Eagles. When you look at matchups and matchups that before the season started were going to be important. It would have been the combination of Baker throwing it to Evans and Godwin and Hurts throwing it to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And at the moment, both of their wide receivers are fit and playing, and both of the Eagles' wide receivers are do not practice, which means they both might not suit up. We're going to get into that in a bit more detail when we do the Buccaneers preview later on in this podcast. Other than that, Lane Johnson was also down with concussion. After he was feeling unwell on the sidelines during the game against the Saints. He is also it did not practice today. However, he's stretching before practice where Devontae wasn't. He stretched yesterday, and he did do a few shadow drills today as well, Phil, without pads on his own. So I'm feeling quietly confident that Lane might make Sunday. If not, Fred Johnson has been suited up. He's been practicing. It's all over Twitter today. Lane Johnson's there watching him practice. Fred Johnson will be your right tackle if Lane Johnson doesn't suit up this Sunday for the Eagles. And it doesn't stop there. Britton Covey is not crash test Covey because he's broken a bone in his shoulder. And I think he put a comment out there on social media saying that maybe he should have, not tried to get the extra yards. But, AJ Brown responded saying, you know, don't you worry about it, dog. You need to go get those extra yards, backing him up, which I really liked. So Covey's down for 6 weeks. So that's, Smitty, AJ, and Covey out wide receiver potentially this Sunday, which is worrying. The good news is Mekhi Becton, who did injure his hand, is a full practice participant yesterday and today. So Mekhi Becton will be fit to play the Bucks this Sunday unless we hear anything else. Tony Burton is back in the game. He's back in the podcast. He's shaking his head Now, this is one of two reasons. One, it's either not working. Two, I'm wrong about Mackay Becton. Or three, he's just pissed off that it took him so long to get in. And I'm going to go with three. He's looking too long to get in, and he can't hear. So, Phil, we'll crack on. And anything to add just on that news before we get to the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy?
Um, I think with the concussions, I think for me, I can't remember the last time someone came back from a concussion within 7 days and played. I think there's probably a couple, but I think generally you would expect them both to be out. I think as soon as concussion gets mentioned, you're like, unless you're on a Monday night football or something like that with a little bit of extra rest or an extra gap, then maybe. But and it does seem that Lane's progressing through, but I think the chances of him making it through are always going to be slim, especially as we speak on Thursday night. He's only got 3 more days, and there's probably only one, maybe 2 more practices. I think there's one more
I just
practice
don't
before.
think he goes onto the field and does those ghost snaps if he's not really trying to make it Sunday. I mean, you like AJ
I
and
don't.
Smitty, you just don't turn up, right?
I think he's trying, and I think he's doing
Right.
everything he can to give us that indication. But I guess I'm just accepting that he's not playing because at the end of the day, the Fred Johnson and Mackay Becton. No, it wasn't Mackay Becton. Who was on the inside? Who the second strings? There's been discussion basically because both left
Tyler
tackle and left
Steen?
Steen. That was it. Because both left tackle, left guard, right tackle, right guard. Sorry, were out of the game. Both the twos came in at the same time, who would have been practicing in the preseason together, so they already have sort of a base level of chemistry. So actually, maybe that was the reason why the difference in quality was still quite high, because it wasn't like a rookie coming in next to Lane Johnson or a rookie coming in next to Mackay Becton at the same time. So I feel like almost if it worked, kind of keep it. Let's keep Lane out because it's his 4th concussion in his career, and as we know from the tour situation, it's something you want to be really wary of. You don't want to lose him before his time because of concussions and risk re-injury or anything like that. So
I got something for you here, Phil. Do
okay,
you mind if I jump in with this? 'Cause I've
no,
been
no,
doing a little bit of research while I've been listening to you. So the median day for a player to be in concussion protocol is 9 days. So
mm,
it's unlikely for a player to come back in 7 days. Brock Purdy, you might remember last year, went into concussion protocol, and he made it back for the following week. And by Thursday, he had reached step 4 and 5 of the concussion protocol. Sorry, stage 4. That involves club-based non-contact training drills, which is what Leighton Johnson, I believe, was doing today for the Eagles. So, as with that as a case, I don't think this changes anything you've said. I still think it's unlikely that he makes it given the median. But that case study just there may point to a similar progression with his concussion protocol than when Brock Purdy came back within a week. And I think concussion protocol for a quarterback is probably more important than concussion protocol for a right tackle. More likely to be hit in the head and bulldozed down than a tackle who are grappling and pushing off. I haven't got any science behind that. Just a gut feeling. Um, so yeah, I think we'll see tomorrow. If he's in contact drills tomorrow, then that would allude to the fact that he will be suiting up. I just want to make a point on this, Phil. The Eagles win loss record without Lane Johnson is in the toilet.
yeah.
I haven't got the stats to hand. Apologies. I'll try and find them while we're on this podcast.
I
But
think they've been quite common, and they are
yeah,
drastic drop off. You are absolutely right. I think
it's like winning record completely swapped to like winning 1 of 4 or something ridiculous like that.
yeah, it's like around 20-30%, I think, if I
Yeah.
remember rightly. But you're absolutely right, and I think that's why I'm referring to the fact that, hey, it happened quite early in the Saints game, but the downturn wasn't that noticeable. It seemed like they stepped up. So maybe, I mean,
They
it could
played
be a
very well.
fluke. It could be a fluke, but at the same time, it's almost just like maybe for the sake of rushing Lane back and risking anything further serious down the line, I think we need to consider the merits of said, actually the 2 guys that kind of went in between. Although they've said that Mackay Becton thinks he's going to be back anyway, so in that case, you do want Lane back. It's a bit of a conundrum, really, and it's not something you really want to be leaving though till the last minute though. Is my
AJ
concern.
Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson. If you told me at the start of the season they were going to be missing for any game, I would have put a big fat L down next to it. So that is going to be tricky for them to overcome no matter what they do. All right, let's get into the next part of the podcast, our favorite part of that podcast, certainly my favorite part of the podcast, and that is the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy. Rightio. So let's start with the bad, Phil, if we can. Tony's back in the podcast. Not sure if he can hear us or not this time around.
Yes, I am.
He's back. Tony, you didn't miss much. We just talked about the game briefly, and we talked about the huge amount of injuries racking up for the Eagles so far. More importantly, you have not missed the Sirianni section.
You see, this was all a tactical ploy to miss the Sirianni Shagathon that I'm expecting to come across tonight. So if that's the case, if I've not missed it, then I'm afraid I've just had another problem with my headphones. Just give me a just give me a shout when you've done and dusted. Sorry about my technical issue, boys. I am back.
Good to have you, Tony. Good to have you, my man, and hear your voice
boys.
In full throttle. Rightio. So I'm gonna hold fire on the Sirianni part because Tony, I want you to hear the interview with myself and Tony Fletcher, Uncle Tone, because we covered Sirianni in a bit of detail on that interview, and then I'm going to open up that conversation. But I will just briefly say he is not getting away with anything this week in terms of being in the bad part of the good, the bad, and damn right sexy for this week's performance. He definitely deserves to be in there. The fake tush push call, while it's not 100%, wasn't 100% to me that he called it a star. He's admitted that he has did call that play, and he persistently went for it despite the moaning of the entire world. It felt like, including the fans live at the link, basically telling him to go for three and take the points. Now, we're going to get into it in a bit. I'll briefly say I got the first one. I understood the first one before halftime. I did not understand the second one at the 50-yard line, giving them the ball back in that territory. I think that's sacrilegious. As a coach, he should not be doing that. I know he's aggressive, but he needs to swallow his pride a little bit sometimes and realize that smarter decisions need to be made. And I will also touch on the fact, I believe it was Shil Kapadia on Twitter said that when Sirianni came out to say that he did that based on his gut, that will not be endearing him to Jeffrey Lurie, who is a massive analytics guy. And the Eagles have been big on their analytics for years. So I'm going to hold that there because I know there's a lot of fire in your belly, and I want it to be unleashed at the right time. Other bad parts of the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy. First half offense was woeful. Aligned with some poor decision making from Jalen Hurts and some poor calls from Nick Sirianni. We're going to get into the defense because they're the only reason we won this game. And Hurts to a certain extent in the second half, as well as Barkley and others. But I suppose the big talking point question for me on the bad here are two players. One is Bryce Huff, and one is Nolan Smith. Bryce Huff more so, given the huge amount of money we've spent on him, $53 million, and the fact that we let Hassan Reddick, my jersey owner, behind. Well, he doesn't know my jersey. That would be impressive. You know what I mean? Him out the door. I asked Tony on the interview. I'll wait for you to hear that. Is it too early to call him a bust already? We'll have to wait for his response. I'll pose the same question to you guys. Tony, seeing as A just joined us, why don't you go first?
You can only go on evidence, can't you? And at the moment, Bryce Huff is a bust. So we're 3 games in. I guess you could cut him a bit of slack and say that he's learning a new scheme, he's part of a new setup, he's part of a new scheme, and he's filling some big boots from the past. But when the stat comes out that Jalen Hurts has had more tackles over 3 games than Bryce Huff, then there's a bit of a problem with your defensive end. So right now he's a bust. However, can he turn it around? Well, I think he's only got 2 or 3 games to do that. And it starts this Sunday in Tampa Bay. weather permitting.
Absolutely. I'll be interesting with that weather and how much that does affect them after the Packers game as well. I mean, Phil, just on Tony's points, it looks like you ever seen that like cartoon where like there's a really big guy and he's got his hand down and there's a little guy running up against like their head, like they can't get anywhere. That's what it looks like with Bryce Huff trying to get to the quarterback. It looks like he's got no power. It looks like he's got no idea of a swim move or a spin move or a bull rush or he's made a couple. He made a couple of better plays on the run defense this Sunday just gone, but getting to the quarterback is what he's paid to do, and it's very concerning.
It is very concerning. When Nolan Smith, who has himself been under quite a lot of scrutiny up until recently, is now being called for to take over from him. Why is Nolan Smith not getting more snaps on the edge? That's when you know that there's some real problems, because Nolan Smith isn't getting paid 30-odd million for however long he's contracted to the team. And sometimes things just don't work, and it could just end up being one of those guys that we've overpaid for. We thought it was going to be good, and we shoulda, woulda, coulda kept Reddick and all that sort of stuff. I guess I'm just still retaining the fact that it's a new team, it's 3 games in, and maybe he'd benefit from a Bryce Young type situation where he kind of gets taken out of the rotation, gets put to the back of the queue, and go ahead and work on what you're not being successful at, and let the other guys have a crack for now and come back in, because it is a bit of a cauldron, a bit of a pressure cooker for players, especially earning that much money in Philadelphia with the fan base. It doesn't take much for people to get on top of you, and things can just end up snowballing. Harken to Trey Turner at the Phillies, the standing ovation, turning his luck around. Sometimes you have to kind of make that drastic change to give him a chance to really come into his own. Maybe he won't. It's hard to really have a take, because this is, like Tony said, that he's a bust by all the stats. Like, it's hard not to say that's what the situation is. But I guess I'm the eternal optimist, hopefully trying to think that something can go right, something can change, that can bring him back in the team. But it just doesn't seem like that's going to come at this point in time. So maybe something drastic needs to happen.
We did see a turnaround in the books for Jordan Davis this week just gone by, and something that we were hoping, and we were getting a bit worried about, I think, about Jordan Davis towards the back end of the last season. He was pretty ineffectual, and he was okay on the defensive run. Actually, I think he was having a bit of unfair criticism, because a lot of the run plays that we were conceding were going to the edges, which is even more concerning for the edges. I don't know whether you saw, but Brandon Graham came out today to say that he's going to make sure that he's ready for one more year after this year in case the Eagles need him next year. Did you see that? Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want that guy around for another year? Even if it's in a non-playing capacity, even if he's just still on the squad but just cheerleading from the sidelines, you'd take him all day long.
If Brandon Graham is capable to take snaps physically, mentally, he's fast enough, and he can apply pressure, then why would you not keep him on for another year? I just want to go back to the Nolan Smith element of the question, Liam, because I'm conscious that you asked of both of them, and I only answered you on Bryce Huff. I guess for me, there's a slight difference with Nolan Smith versus Bryce Huff, and that is that we drafted Smith, albeit it was first round, bottom end of the first round last year, so 2023 first round draft pick. He, I guess, falls into the category of you're going off the tape, off his college tape, you're going off his combine, you're going off his rookie camps, etc. But any draft pick, as the Chicago Bears are finding out just now, as many other franchises across the NFL are finding out just now, regardless of where he picks somebody, it's still just a throw of a dart. And maybe it was just a misfortunate selection on Howie's part, but where you then stray into the hold on, this is a bit of malpractice by Howie, as if Bryce Huff is a bust. That's been a big trade. It's a big contract.
Big lot of
You
cash.
can almost give Howie a pass for picking up a bust in the draft. And maybe it's only his second season in the NFL. The guy that we've just spoken about, Brandon Graham, wasn't exactly a huge hit in his first few seasons in the NFL. And look what he's blossomed into. So maybe Nolan Smith is just a bit of a late developer. The one that you would pin on Howie and say, do you know what, mate, you got it wrong. If he has got it wrong, and we keep saying in Howie we trust. So Bryce Huff, I would be surprised if Bryce Huff is a bust. He might not be the every down edge that we would have wanted, and we were spoiled with Hassan Reddick. So it's still too early to tell. But I think it's not a comparison of apples to apples and saying Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff. I think they're two completely different entities with two completely different and contrasting consequences if we've got it wrong.
Do you think if he is, the Eagles, Howie makes a move for an edge rusher before the trade deadline?
I think he has to. We have. You look across the NFL right now. There is, I would say, the Buffalo Bills are probably the one team that you would say are absolutely firing on all cylinders just now. There's Minnesota sitting at 3-0. They, have done fairly well, beat the 49ers, thank goodness, at the weekend. I don't know if we'll be saying that in a few weeks' time if Minnesota are streaking ahead in the number one seed. You've got the Chiefs, who are 3-0 but could easily be 0-3. There is, aside the Bills, I wouldn't say there is any team right now in the NFL that we should be looking at and saying we can't beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the fact we can't get pressure on a quarterback right now. So I think Kellen Moore, Jalen, the injuries will come back in offense, and we can put up points on any team whatsoever. If we can't get pressure on a quarterback from the edge, then we are going to concede points. Doesn't matter how good Q is, or how good Darius Slay is, or how good the rest of the secondary, whether it's Shagger or Avonte Maddox or Cooper DeJean if he comes in. If we can't get pressure on a quarterback, whether up the middle, and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis got a bit of joy with that, and I saw Brandon Graham come up the middle, no doubt we'll come on to those guys when we go into the good, the bad, and the downright. But it's still the edge that's the problem. Interesting to see that Josh Sweat stats were massively up this week, but you can't rely on one guy getting pressure on a quarterback.
Did you see that
from the edge?
Was that stat? So Mick shared a stat on the WhatsApp group that Josh Sweat has the fourth amount of pressures through the first 3 weeks.
The first 3 weeks. That's right.
Not just week 3, which is pretty impressive.
But if you're only getting pressure from one side though, you're allowing a QB to escape out of pocket, and that's to Phil's earlier point. If you're getting killed around the edge of your line, and it's always going round one edge, and you've got a significant weakness there, you've got to solve that weakness. And if he doesn't begin to perform in the next two competitive games the next 3 weeks, I could see Howie going out and bringing in someone. And there's some big teams out there that are really struggling who have got some fantastic edge guys. So one down at an edge guy down in Dallas, they could be 1-5 by the time we get to the point of saying, you know what, we need an edge, or we need someone different in the linebacker position. Who knows? But yes, Liam. If he doesn't get it right the next 2 or 3 games, I can see how he's going out and making a move.
Me too.
The only thing I'm going to add to that is we had exactly the same problem at defensive tackle 2 years ago, and we signed 2 absolute monsters, Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and they made a massive difference. And I think that absolutely speaks echoes to what you're saying. And I think you don't want to just hope that the guys come good, and I don't think you're going to really impact them too badly if you sign a veteran of that quality. Ndamukong Suh was an absolute revelation. I wish he'd stuck around for a bit longer, but we just weren't able to do that. But that's the kind of signing that you're going to be looking for Howie to make, something like, so the guys in the chat were talking about Ngakwe and players of that ilk, and I know certain players are and aren't available, but that's what we need, because it doesn't just lift the team, it lifts the fan base as well. It gives you that belief that the team is 100% committed to not taking any chances, that those weakness areas are going to be what detracts from any genuine Super Bowl title challenge.
I got a follow-up question for you, Phil. Like that take, and it's a good point. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy yourself a league leading edge. You could pick up a couple of guys who are decent that would make more of an impact than Bryce Huff has over the last 3 weeks. Alex Parks, before the Saints game, made a comment about Vic Fangio, and I don't want to give Vic Fangio any shade on this podcast because of the incredible performance that his team put up. And also, can I add to that, he should probably be in the good part on his own, and we don't put coaches in there enough. The change he made to his defensive approach for the Saints game, it wasn't like last year where we didn't know what to do if stuff wasn't going wrong. For weeks and weeks and weeks on end, no matter who the DC was, whether it was Patricia, or can't even remember the name of the guy who was in before Patricia now. Sean Desai. God, Matt Patricia and Sean Desai. Right, there didn't seem to be any idea of what to do differently, but the 5-man fronts, some of the blitzing, the 5-man fronts. I mean, let's just segue into this right now. Hang on, let me get the question out first. Sorry. So ESP said, I'm jumping around. My mind's going everywhere. I've got so many questions.
Shots.
Yeah. Shots. Yes, ESP said you paid him £51 million, $53 million, whatever it is. You're only giving him 40% of the snaps. He only got 32% of the snaps against the Saints this week just gone by. Let him have 70% of the snaps. Get himself into form. You're paying all that money for him. Put him on the pitch. What do you think of that?
No, disagree with that. I think you kind of, when you went on to your second point about Fangio, I think you've got to look at a guy like Fangio and go, I trust that he's not seeing what he needs to see, and he's also not the sort of guy. And maybe that was the modus operandi of the previous regime, which was just keep trying and keep forcing that square peg into that round hole until something maybe clicks.
Swimming.
And I think that I think I'm going to trust Fangio because, like you said, in this game we've got that certain level. I always refer this back to when you've got a solid goalkeeper in soccer. It's like you don't even think about it. When your defensive coordinator is solid, you don't really worry about conceding goals. You just trust that the defense is there, and that becomes an element that becomes a weapon on offense in itself, which will probably eke into Sirianni's decision to keep consistently go on fourth down. But we'll get into that. Yeah. When your defense is that strong, you have that faith, and I feel like in any good, I'm not in business. You probably be able to offer a better opinion on this, but it feels like you don't persist with bad decisions. When something doesn't work, you just cut it and go. You just admit defeat, go, right, that was a bad decision. And
they say fail often and fail fast. Phil,
yeah,
when
exactly.
It comes to ideas and innovation, all that kind of stuff. Anyway,
I feel like that very much applies to this situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. Far too much time on the back.
Liam, I'm going to chuck my tuppence worth in here, okay. And you spoke about you spoke. Hey, no tuppence, not turpin. Tuppence worth. Just really doubling down on what Phil's just said there. You're saying throw him in. Play him 70% of the snaps. I guess
I'm saying that, not my opinion. Yeah.
No. I know. You're doing a great host role in playing devil's advocate and I guess prompting conversation, but we've spoken about analytics being absolutely key in the NFL now, and we'll no doubt come on to analytics when you begin your Sirianni montage. However, I guess if I was Fangio, probably supported by Sirianni and the rest of the organisation, I guess the way that I would be looking at it just now is if he's not getting home in 30% of the snaps, I would rather limit my exposure to just 30% of the snaps. not getting home in 30% of the snaps is a lot better than not getting home in 70% of the snaps. And
That's
I think
fair.
to Phil's point, until he starts showing evidence that he's beginning to get home or beginning to apply pressure or supporting the tackling of a rusher, then I'm limiting him to snaps until such time as I'm gaining a bit of confidence that he's going to make a contribution. Because right now he's contributing nothing, and I'd rather him contribute nothing on 30% than 70% of snaps. But I get your argument that says you put him in for 70%, he might begin to contribute.
Play yourself into form, right?
Exactly. It's a big risk, though. If you're sitting in Fangio, see it as your first season with what could be, a side of the ball that takes the team to a Super Bowl, it's a big old risk to be taken. Big old risk. As my Loch Lomond signature arrives on the table from my gorgeous wife.
Beautiful. What a wife and what a whiskey. Like that take. I think you're right. I agree with you. Final point for me. I'm starting to feel like Fangio might not be the right personality for Huff. I feel like Huff might need a bit of love, a bit of confidence, to help him spark that. And all of the comments in the preseason from Vic Fangio were completely opposite. He's not a third down back. Yeah, he's not. He's going to have to fight for his snaps. He's not going to be a starter. Like, yeah, he hung that to dry quite a bit in the preseason, and that's ebbed into the season. Maybe he needs a bit of love, a bit of confidence injected in him. Maybe the tough love.
Is that not Sirianni's job though?
Well, maybe
Evidently Sirianni's not doing something else either.
Very good. I like that.
Should have kept that
yeah, I mean, I think you know what I'm saying, right? What we've seen from Vic Fangio in the press conferences in general, he's a very straight talking, brash, blunt, probably too blunt in certain scenarios, guy. And maybe that's not suiting. Maybe that's not suiting Bryce. But maybe Bryce Huff isn't the kind of player we wanted before he came in. Who knows? Anyway, let's move on because we got to get to the good part of the good, the bad, and downright sexy. And I tell you what, folks, we have a lineup of contestants this week for both the damn right sexy and the Loch Lomond play of the week. And I'm just going to get to the nice to mention names very quickly first, because then I want to get into this. I want to get your opinion. I want us to have a vote on it. And I want to see what your opinions are versus my opinions. And I'm really interested to hear what the listeners listening in as well. I'm going to give honorable mentions to Jalen Hurts for his performance after the first quarter. Over 311 yards of passing. He rushed the ball well. He made some very big throws at very important moments in the game. I know he didn't have any touchdowns. He was ranked the fourth best quarterback this week by PFF, even though he didn't have any touchdowns. I think Jalen did a good job this week. Do you think he still needs to make better decisions? I'm not worried. He'll be fine. I'm absolutely fine with it. Smitty had a great game again, 78 yards, looked absolute mint until he got horrendously knocked out of the game by a concussion from, I can't remember the name of the guy in the Saints team, but can I just remind you guys how much he got fined today? $4,800. Right? Who was it that did the Michael Jackson celebration and got $14,000 fine?
Derek Carr.
Derek Carr.
Yeah. What's going on there?
Absolutely ridiculous. I think we need to not cover this because we'll all get far too angry.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about
okay. Well, I will move on from that.
CJGG got a $12,000 fine for pulling the guy's mouthpiece. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It is.
Can I just let me just quickly jump in on Smitty? Do you remember back to the draft when all of the talking heads right across the NFL were saying he's too slight, he's too this, he's too that, he's too the other. He was physically assaulted on Sunday night, and there's just a camera shot that comes in, and he's sitting on the turf.
I mentioned it earlier on while you were on.
Awesome. Yeah. Actually, if it wasn't for a few other things that we're talking about, actually, for me, that's the play. That's the downright sexy. That's a guy who's been vilified for his size, and he's saying, "Do you know what? Fuck you. Look what you've just done to me, and I'm all right. And it's only a protocol that's going to keep me out of the game now." Love that guy. Love that guy.
He looked like he was about to kill someone, didn't he? on the sideline. I did mention it earlier on this podcast. You're so right to mention it. Jordan Davis, I mentioned briefly in this podcast, much better game. And Q had another strong rookie performance. Oh, I wasn't going to do this, but fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Excuse me for swearing. I had to text Mick. You're going to both hate this. I had to text Mick the other night, and I said, "Am I mad, or does it feel like Quinyon Mitchell has got a little bit lucky in some of these big situations?" And I'm not saying this because I don't believe in Quinyon Mitchell or I don't think he will be incredible. And I don't think he's done a really great job so far. And I know he's got 7 forced incompletions so far in 3 games, which I think leads the NFL. I know all that is good. And maybe I'm just being like hypercritical because he's a first round pick. But there's been a couple of incompletions where he's had his back to the ball, been trailing, and it hasn't been I know the ball is there, I'm going to put my hand out. It's kind of been a movement of the arm, and it's got in the way of the ball. At the same, has anyone else noticed that?
So your meaning is lucky in respect that he's not been flagged.
I think 1, looking in respect that he's not been flagged, and 2, I'm not buying that he absolutely knew the ball was there in those moments and got lucky because the ball got there at the same time.
I agree with you in the respect, Liam, that I think he's got lucky. There's been a couple of occasions as well, and we've not really touched on it because there's a bit of Quinyon Mitchell euphoria going on just now.
That's what
And
I mean.
I'm kind of part of that. You know, I'm really excited the fact we've got 2 bloody good lockdown cornerbacks. One of them's a rookie who could be with us for a long. But I do think he's got lucky. I think he's got lucky in a couple of drops. Yeah. I think he's got lucky where, you know, I have been, you know, clenching my chocolate star hole, my chocolate starfish, you know, thinking there's a flag coming in here, and it's not happened.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of occasions as well where, you know, you could say it's been a fantastic football move that he's made,
but he could have picked it.
But there's been a couple of occasions he could have picked, but you put that down to a bit of an inexperience. Sure. And I'm 100% with you, Liam, actually, and it's almost the great unsaid, right? Because you swim against the tide, and you know you're going to get caught, you're going to get vilified, and there's been a couple of occasions I've been ready just to pop something on the chat to say, "Poor, got lucky there."
You haven't for this specifically.
No, seriously, you know, for exactly what you've just said there, and it is the kind of great unsaid. Hugely excited about the guy, but I'm there. Same. And there has been a couple of occasions I thought you got away with that, kid.
Yeah. And Olave was looking good running across the middle, catching balls as well for the Saints earlier on in the game. I'm not saying I'm out on Quinyon Mitchell. I still think he's going to be brilliant.
Not at all. Not at all.
I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl cornerback. I genuinely do. I think he's going to be.
Quinyon Mitchell has not been lucky.
Oh, okay.
Brian Cook for the Chiefs was lucky against the Falcons last weekend for that DPI non-call. I feel like we're being overly harsh on a rookie. I know where you guys are coming from. I know you're not being directly critical of him, and you're just sort of saying that maybe he's had the air of sort of like the fair winds of.
I just don't think he's been as good as everyone is saying he has been. That's all I'm saying. I don't think he's been lights out, and that is what everyone is saying.
I'd agree a little bit with that. I feel like I just look at the rawness of it, and I feel like if you look through the stuff like whether he was lucky or not to get caught, it's like his positioning. The fact that for one of the calls that you're probably referring to, he obviously was massively left behind. He had a big gap to make up. He made that gap up, and he made the right play. And
I think that was a wonderful play, Phil.
He's quick as hell as well.
That was a moment you say, "Oh yeah, boy, we have got somebody here."
Exactly, and you look at let's not get bogged down on whether he was lucky or not to get caught. I think you look at the fundamentals and what he did. He didn't get off to the great start, and he made it up, and he's got that talent. And I feel that's what I focus on more than anything else. Is that I'm excited to see what he can become, rather than whether he's showing it right this specific second. For the fact that he is, and he's being loaded up now, just gives me further confidence that he's getting that recognition so early.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Phil. You're not wrong, Phil. However, for future arguments, I wouldn't refer to any play where the Chiefs have had a refereeing decision go their way. Because I've just said earlier in the conversation they could be 3-0 or 0-3, and the difference between 3-0 and 0-3 with the Chiefs is exactly what you've just spoken about, either an OPI or a DPI that they've had the favour of.
Yeah, and
Right.
we go down a rabbit hole there to the Super Bowl, so let's not do
Or,
that.
or a cat hole.
I love it. Okay, so a shout out to Zach Baun for another stupendous performance the other day. Why is it that when I come on a podcast or when I'm on a work call, this little guy, my cat, if you can't see on screen, decides he wants to jump up and lie all over everything?
I have a theory to that, and it happens exactly to me. It's slightly different. I have a cat, as you may or may not know, and the cat food area is on the middle floor of my house, so the dogs don't get to it. However, if I'm working from home during the entire day, the dogs are fine. They're sitting in the office, being quite happy sleeping. As soon as I get on a call, and I'm not joking, literally, I have to, before I get on a meeting, I have to go and pick the cat kibble bowl up off the floor and put it on the windowsill, because I swear, as soon as I start talking, it's some sort of reaction. The dog goes, "All right, I'm off to go and have a little snack." Yeah, exactly. As soon as you start talking, it's almost like the sound of your voice talking into the ether just makes them do annoying shit.
I'm so,
settled
Phil,
down now. You can see.
Phil, I'm gonna speak on behalf of 90% of our listeners out there and say whatever you said after on the middle floor of our house is gone, because you've just told the world you've got a 3-story mansion somewhere in the southeast of England.
His
I
garden's
definitely
very
don't
nice
have
as
that.
well. I can confirm.
I think to further your point, Tony, it's called a dormer. The type of house I live in,
There we go.
which basically just means I've got a room in my roof, which means I've got a nice big master bedroom, but that's it. It's not that fancy.
Anyway,
See, to me, Phil, Phil, a dormer is a kid that stays in a house attached to a very posh independent school.
Dormer with an A, not an ER. Anyway.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Natalie Dormer, wasn't she in Game of Thrones?
Game of
Anyway.
Thrones, she was, yeah. Anyway,
There you go.
really getting off topic on this part.
Good stuff. Zach Baun, 13 tackles, 9 solo. Huge fourth down stop on Kamara on 4th and 1. This guy is a dog. Bucket. He will be extended by the Eagles in the next few weeks by Howie. He's on a 1-year contract. I guarantee you, if he continues to play like this for the next couple of weeks, to save some money down the line, Howie is going to extend him to a multi-year deal. I think he's only 27 years of age. He's playing the form of his life. And in stark contrast to what I said about Vic Fangio being the wrong guy for Bryce Huff, he is the right guy for Zach Baun. He's believed in him from the start. He's given him the opportunity. He's talked him up every time. He's given him that play, and he is running with it. I am so happy for Zach Baun. We haven't named a shagger yet this year. I'm right in saying we haven't named a shagger yet this year, have we? Have you? No.
You've not. We have, but
well, Zach Baun could be a candidate. Well, I'm the shagger.
Liam, sing it. Go on, sing the mixer.
Oh, no, I haven't got it with me.
Sing the mixer. Come on.
I will next week. I will next week because I need to prepare it for this Sunday. Don't tease it. Don't tease it. Stop it. All right. Let's get into the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy
the
part
damn
of the
right sexy.
Thank you, Phil. Damn right sexy. Right. We're going to go through the 3 candidates for damn right sexy first, and then we're going to go through the 3 candidates for the Loch Lomond play of the week. Can I get a hell yeah for Jalen fucking Carter, please? What a guy. Here we go. Jalen Carter.
It makes a change from Derek fucking Barnett. It's good to have it in a positive sense for a change.
Jalen fucking Carter. One of the best defensive performances I think we've seen from a Eagles defensive player in a long time. Fletcher Cox-esque in terms of dominating. What we hoped we were getting when I drafted him, and we saw flashes last year. folks. We saw flashes of what Jalen Carter could be, and we need to see it more consistently. But oh my God, in my opinion, Jalen Carter won us that game of football. In my opinion, Jalen Carter was the best player on the pitch. In my opinion, Jalen Carter deserves the damn right sexy. 4 tackles, 3 solos, included 2 tackles for loss, 1 QB hit, and importantly, 2 passes deflected. He was getting pressure all day. He was dominating it. He contributed to the interception at the end of the game. Jalen Carter, take a bow. I cannot wait to see you in your Pro Bowl uniform at the end of this season as you take this step forward from now and dominate for the rest of the year. Give me Jalen Carter for the damn right sexy.
Did you
What do
see
you think?
the interview that he had? I think it was today, to say that, like, asking him about these stats and exactly what you're talking about, and his responses were absolutely spot on, perfect. It's great. It's just football at the end of the day. We're just trying to get that win. Like, it doesn't matter if I do these individual things. At the end of the day, we're playing for a team, and that just sort of filled me with heart. Just to underline your point there, he came out and said, and it shows the maturity in him, which may or may not have been helped by Fangio dropping him for a few series against the Falcons, I believe it was.
We saw his maturity there. I'm not sure we saw his maturity at the end of the game, although I really did enjoy seeing that, Tony.
That
You know
was
what I'm talking
special.
about, right?
Oh, loved it. Absolutely loved it. You know, if the fans are going to give you some shithousery, and the guy wants to give it back, but you know, he had the right. He had earned the right
Oh yeah.
to give shit to whoever it was that was giving it behind him. And the only thing that was wrong with that was the people that were trying to stop him.
Yeah. They might have saved him a fine or two, but listen, Breadman for me, damn right sexy. I'll hold fire on you saying who yours is, but Phil, I'll let you talk about Saquon Barkley. You can either agree with me, you can go with Saquon, or the third one, which we'll talk about in a second, is Dallas Goedert. They are your 3 damn right sexy candidates. But Phil, talk to me about Saquon Barkley, and before you do, I will just bring up my point that I made on the first podcast about Saquon Barkley having many more opportunities to win the damn right sexy. And in week 3, he has his 3rd opportunity to win it in a row. So I'm just going to, take a little whiff there. I told you so. Poor little Zach Bond, who didn't get it in week 1 when I said he should. How you feeling now, boys? All right,
What
Saquon
he's
Barkley,
saying?
3rd in a row.
He's saying that 13 tackles isn't worthy of contendership. I think the fact that we've got so many other candidates is the reason why Zach Bourne is not in the topic for this week. But on any other week, his performance could have easily been in the window. So I think that your point about he's not going to get any more opportunities is also false.
That's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah,
So,
okay.
but to go back to Saquon Barkley, I think it just gives me. I mean, I get up every morning. I get outside of my bed. I get on my knees and I pray to the altar of Saquon Barkley. That I'm grateful that he's an Eagle and that he's bulldozing down teams. He's the reason why I named this podcast "Bulldozing in the Bayou," because I feel like that's where it came from. Yes, there were other contributions in Dallas Goedert, but Saquon Barkley is the man that changed the game. He is the name that changed the game. You can argue there's contributing factors, but he is the name that put the Eagles in front first. He's the name that put the Eagles in front second, and he's the name that put the nail in the coffin with the 2-point conversion. I feel like 17 attempts for 147 yards doesn't get enough microphone time. It's four catches as well for 9 yards, and the 2-point conversion as I've mentioned, and the speed on that 65-yard touchdown, which is a contender for the Lock Lineman Player of the Week, which we'll get onto.
I mean, 2 touchdowns, Phil, 150 yards all purpose and a 2-point
Yeah.
conversion.
Yeah.
Definitely
So
enough for the damn right sexy. Yeah.
To summarize perfectly, that's essentially why he is the contender, the second option for damn right sexy this week. I definitely would not be upset in the slightest if any of the other 2 got the award. I think the fact that we're talking about 3 equal deserving targets is just indicative of the fact that it was such a gritty win, that we've got 3 clear candidates for that. It's something in itself. So I'll let Tony
Sounds
take.
like he's your candidate then, Phil. You going for Saquon?
Oh, I'm happy. This is what I mean. Like, because there's 3 targets, it's like whichever one you gave me.
Get off your fence.
No, but whichever one you could have given me, I would have been this passionate, this had this much substance to the argument, and would have been equally happy to lose to any of the other two, just no matter who I end up picking. The fact that you gave me Saquon Barkley gave me the chance to give the analogy about praying at his altar, because I feel like he is the savior of this team in terms of moving forward offensively. He is just the guy. He is just it. He's the goat. He's the guy. I'm just loving the fact that we've got another 14 weeks.
I need to keep pinching myself that we have Saquon Barkley in our team.
We've got another 14 weeks of him.
Touch wood, Jesus, Mary Joseph.
No, but we've got another 14 weeks to see what he can possibly do, plus another season. The fact that he's in the Eagles is just, I'm enjoying it week by week. I'll let you. I'll let Tony take over with Dallas Goedert now.
I mean, Tony, can you just? I'm gonna ask you to defend Dallas Goedert here, Tony, because Phil said there were other contributions by Dallas Goedert in a flippant throwaway remark. The guy, I mean, on our stats, which is quite impressive because it's not possible. It says he was 11 for 10, which means he got one more than was actually thrown his way. For 170 yards. 170 yards, Tony, including that massive.
Liam, you're stealing my thunder. You're stealing my thunder.
I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that Jalen Carter had huge impact on the game, and Saquon Barkley's a man. However, let's not overlook the enabler to the offense beginning to click down in Louisiana. And I present to you Mr. Dallas Goedert. Now, let me remind you, Mr. Philip Mount Stephen, that only last week you, in your monologue of the failings of the Atlanta game, you said, and I quote, the reason that we lost that game was because Kellen Moore did not scheme Dallas Goedert into our setup well enough. And he did. And he did, so actually, in a veiled way, I'm saying take a whiff, Mr. Mount Stevens, because you called it. We lost the Atlanta game because Dallas Goedert didn't get schemed in enough. He's been schemed in enough this week, and lo and behold, he's got 23 yards more than 147-yard running back in Saquon Barkley. Can I remind you, gentlemen, of the third down where Jalen flicked him the ball, he caught it, and he ran and got us a first down. But let's just rewind a second to that catch. How on earth did Dallas Goedert's left hand reach out and catch that ball? He had no right to catch that ball. But I don't know how he did it. It was like Mr. Elastic from the Invincibles. He extended his hand to an extent that I think only Johnny Wilson knows, a bigger wingspan than that. Not only did he extend it, he caught it. He got us that first down, which was critical at that point.
Tony, and the yak.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But he made that first down, which was critical at that point of the game. And to put the cherry on top of the icing, on top of the cake, it was Dallas Goedert that took us down to the 5-yard line that then enabled Mr. Barkley to push home not only the touchdown, but also the 2-point conversion to seal us the game. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Dallas Goedert, 170 yards, most comprehensive contribution to the Eagles' win down in Louisiana.
Can I just say, not only did I love that, but I loved the delivery of it, Tony. And I'm thinking now for future podcasts, we need to do a lawyer case courtroom style delivery of these, Mr. Speaker. Well, and maybe it's, Mr. Mick McGivern that we're pitching our damn right sexy to, and then for the Loch Lomond play of the week, it's to the British and Irish Eagles fans, and maybe we name one as the final save at a tie. I don't know, just some ideas. But I just got the feeling all the way through it was like, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, may I play the case? I have to say, I am siding with Dallas Goedert over Saquon Barkley. Might be retribution for week one. Will not confirm or deny that. I think both are very good candidates. I think Jalen Carter, for me, was the reason we were still in the game. And without Jalen Carter, Dallas Goddard, no matter what he did, we would have been too far behind, that we wouldn't have had a chance of winning it. So I do feel strongly that Jalen Carter kept us in this game long enough for the Eagles to win it. But I would be very happy if Dallas Goddard was the winner of the Damn Right Sexy. So we'll put this to a vote on the Twitter feed. We'll get Mick for his opinion on that as well, and let us know who your vote is for the Damn Right Sexy. Oh, hang on, Your Honor. Final piece of evidence, order to be submitted by Mr. Tony Brereton.
Well, let me just call the final witness to the case for Dallas Goddard to win the Downright Sexy Award. Dallas Goddard will not win the Loch Lomond Play of the Week for reasons which we will go on to.
Okay.
So by default, I think Mr. Barkley may stand a very good chance to win that. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's discount Saquon Barkley from the Downright Sexy for this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I propose that the Judge McGivern or our audience decide between between Dallas Goddard and Jalen Carter.
I love the way we're making this game up as we go, but it's brilliant.
That's brilliant. I'm loving it.
Judge McGivern and the British and Irish Eagles jury, right? That's what we're going to do moving forward. All right, so Dallas Goddard or Jalen Carter for the Damn Right Sexy. Please put your votes in, everyone. Do you want the game wrecker on defense that kept us in the game, or do you want the juggernaut who stepped up when he needed to with AJ Brown out and helped ice the game for the Birds? There you go. There's your decision. Looking forward to seeing what the result is of that one. All right, let's get to the Loch Lomond Play of the Week. Afterwards, we are going to do the Loch Lomond ad read, followed by a 14-minute interview with Tony Fletcher on the ground in Philadelphia, followed by, one more ad read for the Birds Fly Home trip, and then we're going to get into the preview of the Buccaneers game. So strap yourselves in, folks. It's not going to be a short podcast. So the other couple, let's just get straight to it, Tony. I think perhaps keep Saquon Barkley to last in that list for the Loch Lomond Play of the Week. And I feel like I'm going to remove one of the other ones as well, because Dallas Goddard is in there for his 60-yard catch to help retake the lead. But he's in there for the Damn Right Sexy. So let's remove him from that and keep in the two players who cannot win the Damn Right Sexy, which is Saquon Barkley and Ghost. Do you have it? You seem to put your hand up there, Tony.
I did, Liam, and I said only a few minutes ago that I don't think that Dallas Goddard can win the Loch Lomond Play of the Week. The one play that would have seen us nominate Dallas was the 60-yard catch and run down to the 5-yard line. And I've not seen us spoken about at all on
I know what you're going to say, by the way.
Go for it.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Go on.
Is this why didn't you get in the end zone?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I mean, if he'd got in the end zone, we wouldn't have had the hilarious Jordan Mailata mic'd up.
I know.
And
unhook
the trailer.
Yeah.
Tell me this, guys. Tell me this. How long was left in the game at that point? Under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just over a minute left.
What happened? Why did you go out of bounds?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you go out of bounds? I'm pretty sure.
I think because he was trying to get to the end zone. I think because he was trying to toe the line, get as far as he can.
These guys earn millions of dollars. You've got to make decisions in play. The guy was blowing through his arse at that point. He knew he was not going to get to the end zone. He's looking over his shoulder, and he's got three, New Orleans Saints secondary. It ate his chocolate starhole. Where a starhole came from, I'll never know. But his chocolate starfish, yeah. He knew he was not going to get to the end. So why did he step out of bounds? Force them to use their timeout. We could then use a timeout, set ourselves up for, how many of the guys listening to this podcast, yourselves included, as soon as Saquon crossed the goal line into the end zone, did you say there's too much time on the clock?
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, that is accurate. To myself, I'm going to let Phil report to this. I've spoken on this podcast, but before you do, Phil, did you see Devin Singletary do it for? I think it was Devin Singletary do it for the Giants, where he iced the game inside He was running for, I
I
think it
did,
was
yeah.
Devin Singletary, and he was through on goal, and he sat his arse down on the 1 yard line and iced the game. Right, I completely get that. Very clever move. Devin Singletary was 5-6 yards clear of the defenders, and it was very easy for him to make that decision. Say, Dallas Goedert had 3 or 4 players around him. He was still trying to get to the end zone. I feel like when you're 3rd and 16, I said I was going to let Phil answer this, and I'm doing it already. Sorry, Phil. When you're 3rd and 16 and the game's nearly over, and then you catch the ball and you go 60 yards and you see the end zone. I mean, give me a man in the world who isn't going to want to try and get to that end zone point in that moment in time. He was pushed out. It wasn't like he ran out, right? He tried to stiff arm him off. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw Derek Henry's stiff arm the other night. Oh God, sexy. It didn't work, and he went out of bounds. I get your frustration, Tony. I'm not.
It's not,
I don't.
Liam, it's not frustration. It's not frustration. But had we ended up losing the game, we would have been rewinding to that point to say, why did I not go down?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and for that reason and that reason alone, that
It's
is not
precluded.
that is not the Loch Lomond play of the week.
You're absolutely right, Tony. But just for the interest of Liam's answer to Liam's question, just cut, copy, and paste what Liam said. Just translate it into English and put it back in the podcast, and that's essentially what I would say because he's absolutely spot on. I agree with him completely.
I'm going to take it on the chin, and it's fair enough because I get excited sometimes. You guys know I do. When ideas pop into my head and my mouth runs away with it. So apologies, Phil, but I'm glad we were on the same boat, my friend.
It was a wonderful answer, Phil. Thanks for that.
I love it. Okay, Phil, then talk me through Ghost Blankenship and his Loch Lomond Player of the Week nomination.
It is not a fluke that this guy knows how to intercept the ball. For his draft capital caliber that he is, he came into the team with, the expectations on him being so low. The guy has talent. The guy knows what to do, and he is going to thrive in this Fangio defense alongside Shagger Johnson. He intercepts it's that classic icing of the game interception where it's like your nerves are just like they're building, your ass is tightening, it's tightening, and the game is getting to that point where, especially after last week against the Falcons, we're all going, oh no, here we go again. We are gonna duff this up somehow because we're going to let them march down the field. But instead of that history repeating itself, Reed, Ghost Blankenship just dives in. He recognizes the play. He jumps forward. I mean, he's at full stretch. It reminds me of the Nicky Butt header against Newcastle United in the FA Cup, I believe. Just to sort of.
Do you know what? Sorry, just to quickly jump on that point. I know this is not going to entertain many of our listeners, but Nicky Butt scored an enormous amount of goals against Newcastle United for a central defensive midfielder who never scored against anyone else. The amount of times scored against. Anyway, go on, Phil. Another one would be the John Terry header where he blocks the foot on the ball with his face.
Just that full extension flying across the field in the direction of the football. He knew where it was going to be, when it was going to be. Like he was the Flash, he was there in a flash, and he intercepted the ball, and immediately the emotions just unbottle. They fall out. We've won the game. We've iced the game. The whiskey's flowing, splattering across the living room, the TV. It's just like that.
I was dancing in a bar in Nerha, and no one else around was interested in the NFL. I had it on my laptop because they were still playing.
I think you had it on the TV.
No, I had it on both. So the Man City Arsenal game finished half an hour into the Eagles game starting. So all of the locals, by the way, everyone in Nerha is either Irish or English, loads of Irish. They're all watching Man City Arsenal. So I had the laptop and an earpiece for me and Katie for the first kind of quarter and a half of the game. And then for the rest of it, I had it on the laptop for the volume which was a minute behind the play on the TV with no volume. So I'd watch the play on the TV and then listen to the commentary back afterwards on my laptop. And everyone was packed bar, drinks flying everywhere. But no one was watching the game. And when we scored, when Dallas caught that ball, and then when we scored the touchdown, and then when we intercepted it, like, I'm surprised I wasn't arrested in Spain. Put it that way.
But I think that's exactly why it's deserving of the Loch Lomond Player of the Week. Not because it's necessarily better than the Saquon Barkley 65-yard touchdown, which I know will be covered in a second, but for what it meant and the symbolism and what it meant for the fans, how much we enjoyed that moment. So a Player of the Week is a specific moment for me, and that means more. Like, I love the 65-yard touchdown, but I feel like the interception is deserving of that magic moment, worthy of the golden nectar of Loch Lomond.
And his post-match game ball speech, ride or die with this team, Phil. You like that
And
as well, right?
I was meant to mention that. Like, you're absolutely right. The ride or die. I love this damn team. Ride or die. He and Jalen Hurts in the background, absolutely loving
Smiling,
the hell out of it.
grinning from ear to
Grinning, yeah.
ear.
That's
Yeah.
what you want in it. Going back to just the the good teams win tough games. The good teams love and have these little moments that show that they're together, that they're building, that's where the team is right now. That's the nucleus of the team, is players like Reed enjoying those moments, and the quarterback who is sort of enjoying that with him.
I love that. And Tony, because you decide the Loch Lomond Player of the Week, I'm going to do the Saquon Barkley speech for it, because I actually think Saquon Barkley should win the Loch Lomond Player of the Week. And the reason I think he deserves the Play of the Week is he did something that not very many, a very few, maybe 2 or 3 running backs in the league or running backs in the last 10, 20 years can actually do. And he ran away from the secondary. So the speed at which Saquon took this ball, the cut he made inside, I think I remember reading, and maybe it was something you read, you said, Phil, or someone else said, that he was only expected to gain 3 or 4 yards on that play from an EPA perspective. I think he probably would have got most running backs would have got 10 yards on that play. Not many running backs in the NFL can stick that left leg in the ground when they're coming up towards the secondary, spin away to the right, and run away. He was still running further away from them when he got into the end zone. He hit 21.6 miles per hour on this run, which is the fastest run in the league this year from a wide receiver or a running back. He's running faster than wide receivers. That's not too far away from Tyreek Hill and Devin A-Chain's speeds last year when they were rushing the ball. And for a player who large swathes of the Eagles fan base before we traded for him, and large swathes of the NFL fan base, and obviously the Giants fan base, said he was crocked, said he wasn't going to be good anymore, said his leg was going to explode, he wasn't going to be there anymore. The fact that he is as explosive as when he came out of Penn State, and he looks like the unquestioned best running back in the league at the moment with C-Mac out. He looks better than Kamara, in my opinion. He looks better than Bijan Robinson. He looks better than Devin A-Chain. And Derrick Henry had a good game. Overall, Barkley looks better than Derrick Henry so far. That touchdown, and I just want to say one more. I know it's the Play of the Week, but when we scored the second touchdown, did you all see what Barkley did as soon as he crossed the line? All of the offensive linemen were cheering. They were all trying to big him up, and he pushed them all back, and he did this, and he said 2, 2, 2. He is such a leader. He knew exactly what they needed to do in that moment to make sure they couldn't lose the game on a 3-point play. And I know that's not Loch Lomond Play in a week, but I just wanted to add that in as an extra piece of evidence. That 65-yard touchdown is probably going to be one of the fastest rushing touchdowns that you're going to see this season from any running back. And what an important moment. And for that reason, Tony, I believe Saquon Barkley deserves the Loch Lomond Play of the Week.
Phil, I am terrible for preconceiving my ideas about who is going to be the Downright Sexy of the Week and also the Loch Lomond Player of the Week. And do you know what? You put up a hell of a fight. Because as you were describing that moment when Reid intercepted that ball, actually, you're totally right. The relief that just coursed through my body was palpable, and actually, it's one of these memorable experiences as an Eagles fan that you will cherish for the rest of your life. You'll always remember where you were when Brandon Graham punched the ball out of Tom Brady's hands, and Derek Barnett picked the ball up, and we won the Super Bowl as a result. And Alshon Jeffrey, the last time we were down in New Orleans. However, Saquon Barkley, you are the Loch Lomond Play of the Week winner. 65 yards, the fastest you have ever run as a running back. And there was a name that fastest he's ever ran as a running back. It's the longest rushing NFL touchdown of the year in the NFL. But boy, oh boy, Phil, you pushed him close with Reid Blankenship, and we will love Reid forever as a result of that. Can I just throw a little wrinkle into things? And it's not the Loch Lomond Player of the Week, but I remember some of our conversations towards the tail end of last season where the wheels had completely fallen off. We'd gone 10-1. Now, I've not looked back in the stats, but how many of those 10 wins were single score wins?
A lot.
We've played 3 games this season. We are, so it's almost gone back to the forefathers' speech, isn't it?
Last year we were basically saying we hadn't blown anyone away. That's what it felt like until we.
No, last season, Liam, we were saying that good teams win tight games, and the wheels completely fell off at the end of the season. Are we at risk this early? We're 2-1. There's some big teams that are just falling apart. Dallas being one of them, beautifully. We'll see how they get on against the Giants tonight. But are we at risk of falling into that trap of good teams win football matches, even if it's just by one score, and actually we're overlooking some of the failings of the team? That's just a question that I'm going to leave hanging until the Tampa Bay match. I think we should come back to that next week. But for now, let's just celebrate the glory.
I'll think about it, and I'm sure Phil will as well. I'll do some research on it. My initial thoughts are I don't feel like that so far. But yes, congratulations to Saquon Barkley for your Loch Lomond Play of the Week. And with that, gentlemen, we're going to go straight into the Loch Lomond advert read, and then I'm really looking forward to you guys hearing my interview with Tony Fletcher. Take some notes. I want to discuss what he says afterwards. And let's try and keep this below 2 hours if we can. Speak to you in a second, Bird Gang.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuren to suit any taste palette. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar. Fly Eagles fly.
Fletcher, Uncle Fletch, as I like to call you. You've been name dropped a number of times on this podcast and appeared on it once or twice in the early days as well. How are you?
I'm very well, Liam. Good to see you. Good to be back after a 2-3 year hiatus.
I love it. Coming back to us at a time where there's a lot of unknowns in the Philadelphia Eagles world. A couple of new coordinators, Sirianni kind of in the hot seat a little bit. Jalen Hurts wasn't great towards the back end of the last year. We haven't seen a lot of consistency over the first 3 games, certainly in turning the ball over. So lots to discuss with you, and just looking forward to getting some ears on the ground takes. What are people saying on the ground in Philly? What's the vibe like in general? So why don't we start with that, Tony? What's going on? What are you hearing on the ground there in Newtown, Pennsylvania?
I'm sure it will come as no surprise to you that everybody's screaming about Sirianni.
Yeah.
Everybody's panicking about Jalen, even though we're 2-1. Coming into the season, our biggest concern was the defense, and lo and behold, it's back to the same old Sirianni bashing, sometimes justified in certain areas, agreed, and Jalen has to do better. So, the radio heads, the talking heads on the radios, that's really taking up probably 80% of the conversation.
Really?
Yeah,
wow, that much.
It's Sirianni has to get out of the way, let Kellen Moore do his thing, stop getting involved with decisions, and just manage the team.
What do you think about that?
I think to a certain extent that's absolutely how it should be. I mean, I think most professional teams have the head honcho, but the soldiers do everything for them. I think he has the right to step in if he really feels something's wrong, but he seems to be making all the wrong decisions right now.
He does, which doesn't help.
Had we lost, I mean, we could be 0-3, Liam, and in which case, I think they'd be running him out of town. But the fact that we're 2-1 is keeping the Wolves off a little bit, but no, on the whole, the general consensus, he's got it. We hired Kellen Moore for a reason. Manage the team, do the press conferences, G up the guys, and let your coordinators do their thing.
Do you think somebody, because it's quite funny, Mick wasn't on the podcast last week, nor was I. I got berated for being missing another losing podcast, probably rightly so. And Mick is ruthless in our WhatsApp chat here in the UK about Sirianni. Once gone, thinks he's an idiot, thinks he's a moron, doesn't like him, doesn't like his personality, doesn't like anything about him. Like he's vicious in his feedback about it, and that's a fairly consistent noise coming from over here as well. Just staying on Sirianni just for a second. Do you think it's justified? Because I'm kind of in the other camp a little bit. We've made 3 playoffs in 3 years, and we've been to a Super Bowl. I don't think that Howie keeps him around. I don't think that Lurie keeps him around if they didn't believe that, he was going to be a good thing for this football team.
Well, I agree. I like Sirianni. He's a bit of a kook, but he's got his quirks, don't we all? His record speaks for itself. He is a winning coach, and he's only in his 3rd season, I think 3rd or 4th. So it's still new to him. He needs to adapt a little bit. Until you know how the players or what they really feel about him, then you don't know. But on the whole, I know there's the potential rift with Jalen. I think on the whole, I think the guys like him. I mean, I think the players like him. Now,
Dallas came out to say this week that was the case.
As long as that continues, that's fine. The day that the players turn on him, then it becomes a problem. You've also got to understand and realize that Howie and Jeffrey want somebody they can control. And that'll always be the case with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Peterson tried to challenge, he's gone, 2 years after a Super Bowl. So, I think you stick. We're in it for the long haul with Nick, certainly for this season anyway. So, I think we might as well just get on with it, But so, I know we're short of time. So,
go.
So Nick's under the cosh, obviously. I mean, everybody wants, everybody's enjoying firing away him. Jalen, let's go to Jalen.
Okay.
So, obviously, he's had good things and bad things. Will only be as good as he is. He's got to do better. Guy was on the radio called Ray Didinger. He's like, I would say, the godfather of of Eagles knowledge, and I love what he has to say. And he said the same today. He came on the last so giveaways, takeaways. The last 11 games, the Eagles have lost the giveaway takeaway ratios. Now, in the NFL, historically, 70% of teams who lose that ratio, lose 70% of the games. We got lucky. We've won, more than that. But that has to change. He has to be better. But on the whole, I mean, that's all. He's third game, new coordinator. I like Jalen. I like a lot of what he's done. He's just got to stop. And now I texted you the other. It's just, right now we just assume he's going to do 2 or 3 dumb things in a game.
And we're not going to get away with that every week like we have over the last 3. Yeah.
And hey, going into Tampa, we know that they have his number in Tampa. If he and if I do get out to Philadelphia tomorrow, which isn't looking likely, and I'll be at the game on Sunday, then could be another one of those who knows what games. So
I know it's interesting. Tampa's just come off a pretty devastating loss to the Denver Broncos. I think Baker was sacked 7 times.
Yeah.
Threw an interception. So I think their O-line is pretty beaten up. I haven't seen the injury report yet to see if they're going to be back in action for this weekend.
No, I think we're going to go in.
Pass rush apart. Look, let's talk about positive for a second.
Yes.
Let's talk about Jalen Carter.
Yes.
What a coming out game it felt like. I know he had some good games last year, but it felt like he dominated the game.
Phenomenal game. Yeah, that's the Jalen Carter we need with a backup with Jordan Davis. If those two can sustain that, we saw flashes, didn't we, last year, especially early on in the season. If they can play like that every game, then we'll be in every game. Yeah. Because moving on from that, I hate to go from the positive to the negative. When Brandon Graham's our best edge rusher, that's a problem. 36
years of age.
That's a problem. So we need those boys to stuff the middle and get through, get pressure, and then you see Blankenship and the secondary can cope. Rather than getting shredded all the time. So
I think one of the biggest things I saw on the defensive line last week has been talked about a bit is the amount of 5-man front stat Nick showed. So and that seemed to mean that Jalen Carter wasn't double teamed as much, which meant he had one-on-one matchups. And I think moving forward, Vic Fangio has to deploy that more. It'd be interesting to see if that was just a specific matchup, because we didn't see him do that in the first 2 games, or whether it's a change in tactic for the foreseeable.
I think Fangio's got to evolve with the players he's got, right? He's had 2, the first 2 games, you got to see what he was dealing with, and then you adjust and adapt with the strengths and weaknesses of what you've got. So, I think obviously last week he did a phenomenal job, but
is it too late? Is it too early to call Bryce Huff a bust?
No.
He's a bust?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think you've heard of Seth Joyner. Seth Joyner was a Eagles legend linebacker. He
joined us on the trip last year for the 76ers game.
Yeah. So I was listening to him, today or whatever, and he said, we're paying $53 million. He's a project. Crazy. He's an incomplete player, and we're trying to make him something that he isn't. And he said, the Jets just passed him down to us, and we're happy to get rid of him. He's, I think, he's not. For once, how he completely got it wrong on that one. So
I posed a question to the WhatsApp group here in the UK the other week around, would you do a straight swap with Hassan Reddick, bring him back because of all of the stuff that's going on with him at the Jets, and sending back Bryce Huff? Would mean you pay a lot more, you'd eat a bit of dead cap, but you reset that. I don't think the Jets would do that, but if that was on the table, would you snap it up?
I would snap it up in a heartbeat, yeah. Hassan Reddick back, but the Jets aren't stupid. They got rid of...
I've got a jersey for Reddick as well, which means I can wear it. Well, I've got this thing, I buy jerseys and then the players leave, so...
You see, you got to stop buying jerseys, Liam. Got to stop buying jerseys. It always ends in tears. But talking of jerseys, so... Going back to and here's typical Philly, right? Talking of positives, Saquon or how.
Oh my God!
One of Howard's greatest ever, moves ever, right? So what are we talking about here? We're complaining about how many carries he's getting. It's going to be 500 carries by the end of the year. We can't enjoy having a phenomenal player doing the business. We've got to find a reason to complain. So that's.
And he's a leader as well, Tony. I mean, one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this has been picked up on any of the podcasts yet because I haven't got a chance to listen to any of them this week. But when we scored the touchdown at the end of the game, when he scored the touchdown at the end of the game after the Goddard reception, which was bloody needed because that was over and that didn't happen. As soon as Saquon scored, he turned around and he did this and he said two to everyone. Like what? Like he knew what was going on. They were all celebrating, and then they all went, okay, yeah, and then they got back into position.
Yeah.
No. So he's a real leader on that.
Yeah, he's a true what you call a true pro, isn't he? He's the kind of person that every team needs. If it's a soccer team, it's the midfield player who keeps everybody on an even keel, or every team needs somebody to just keep everybody focused. And he's, it was after the week before, it was great to see him come back and do what he did. So yeah, we're. If you want, he's just great to watch, isn't he? He's just
he is. I mean, and of course, one of the first times I watched any college football was with you in the US when we watched him tear defenses apart for Penn State.
Yeah.
But I tell you one thing you won't be very happy to see, Tony, but Mick will is I do have a Notre Dame hat.
Yeah, that's like being a Cowboys fan. It's you're a fraud. Pathetic. It's
the Fighting Irish. It got me in the end.
Absolute rubbish. So whatever. So yeah, let's not talk college football then. But
all right. Well, before I let you go, Tony, let me get prediction for this Sunday against the Bucks, and then after that, what's your finishing record for the Birds this year?
Gosh, with the injuries and prior to the injury report, trying to predict Sunday. I'm going to go a close loss.
Close loss. It is going to be very tight.
A maybe field goal at the end. I just don't. I don't know. It's hard to believe right now. I think it's just no. Got to wait and see. And I'm thinking we'll win our 10 win season.
10-win season. Yeah,
I started off at 12-13.
Yeah, I had 13 at the start of the season. I'm probably down towards the 11 mark now.
Right.
Let me just reject that call that was incoming. I got to go in 2 seconds.
All right.
I'll give my prediction on the podcast tomorrow night for Sunday's game.
Yeah.
We'll be doing our first watch along at Passion Avenue of the season. We got 50 UK British and Irish Eagles fans coming along. And before I got on this call, Maura Barker, who is a member of the British and Irish Eagles in the UK, said that a lady has just joined her company in the sales team.
Yeah.
And that lady has 2 children with Darius Slay.
Really?
Yeah. So putting Maura to task, see if we can't get Mr. Darius Slay to come on the podcast. One question for me though, like if she's got 2 children with Darius Slay, why is she working? I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, you never know when they. No, let's not go. Let's not
go there. Let's not go there. Tony, it was great to see you, my man, and we'll speak soon. We'll get you on later in the year if anything goes mad in Philadelphia as well.
Sounds awesome. All right, see you later. Go Birds.
Cheers, Tony. Bye.
Bye.
The Eagles trip of a lifetime. 25 fans from the UK and Ireland visited Philadelphia on a 5-day unforgettable Eagles tour. Hosted by the British and Irish Eagles group alongside Philly Sports Trips, the inaugural trip included a VIP stadium tour of the Link and a big shopping spree at the Pro Shop. The group met celebs, journalists, former players, and Eagles assistant head coach Jamal Singleton.
And that bunch of British people here. Yeah.
And Eagles insider Dave Spadero. The group stayed in a 4-star hotel in downtown Philly next to all the iconic attractions, making a cameo appearance on local TV channels.
Fly, Eagles, fly!
Smashing up the Cowboys on a truck.
Yeah.
Watch the Sixers and Flyers at Wells Fargo in a luxury suite. And then it was game day, with an all-inclusive VIP tailgate before heading to the stadium to watch the Eagles versus the Cowboys. You can be part of future trips to watch the Eagles. Register at the British and Irish Eagles website and come with us to the Eagles' trip of a lifetime.
There you go. Right. I am going to say no more words. And I'm going to pass it straight over to Tony Burton for your take on the interview with your namesake over in Newtown, Pennsylvania, Mr. Tony Fletcher.
Liam, I'm going to come back to Tony in a second. Just watching that ad read for the Birds Fly Home trip, I'm so disappointed that I can't go on that trip. I've listened for months now to you guys talking about how amazing the trip was last year, and of course I've been involved in the conversations about everything that you guys have got planned for this year. T-shirts have been released today. There's obviously going to be a special Ben Lomond bottle for everyone who is going to be involved. We are going to be planning how we manage the logistics of that in the next few days. You guys are so lucky. There is still time to sign up for the trip, isn't there? So, if anyone is thinking about it, it's out with the realms of possibility for me this year for a number of reasons. But my oh my, guys, if you're sitting on the fence right now and you're thinking, should I or should I not? I have listened to the plans for this trip for months now, and it is going to be a life-changing experience. Please, go and have a look at the website, british-eagles.co.uk. Have a look at what's on offer. Have a look at Philly sports trips on Birds Fly Home. It's going to be phenomenal, and of course, the Flyers and the 76ers are going to be playing home as well. And who knows, with the way that the Phillies are playing just now, it could be a World Series visit. I'm so jealous of you guys. I really am. And it just strengthens my resolve for 2025 that I
was going to say,
absolutely have to be there. I have to be there. I really do.
Yeah, well, we look forward to getting you there for it. And just quickly on that point, at the Phillies, you mentioned earlier the Trey Turner standing ovation. Netflix have just released that on I think it's the 8th of October. They're going to be releasing a Trey Turner documentary / sports documentary about that as well. And it feels like no matter what week it is, it's either the Phillies are going to win the World Series or the Phillies are terrible. It's just like life of being a Philadelphia sports fan. But thanks for that, Tony. But I want to come straight back to you about Tony's interview. Just give us your thoughts on that.
So the first thing is, it's good to have a Tony on the podcast that people can actually understand. He is articulate. He's knowledgeable. He's everything that any other Tony that appears on this podcast is not. But it is common knowledge that people call Tony sometimes talk pish. And we'll come back to the Sirianni piece. Quite interested to listen to you and Uncle T talking about these two children to Darius Slade. I'm sure there's more to that. However, it's not unusual for women in America to have children to NFL players, given that around about 162 million have children to Tyreek Hill. Evidently, if we want to talk about a shagger, it's him. And the final piece is, you guys spoke about your Hassan Reddick top, and Tony quite rightly counselled you and coached you about the buying of Eagles tops. You're going to have to adopt this rule, Liam, and the rule stands solid. You've got to have 3 to 5 solid seasons in midnight green before you buy a jersey. The end. So
I do know that's your tactic, and I'm going to take counsel on that.
It's got to be. It's got to be. And do you know who's just entered that Ring of Honor is Devonta Smith, and he is going to be my next Eagles purchase. In fact, I might send some dollars your and Phil's way.
Absolutely.
and ask you guys to get me a Smitty top whilst you're over there. Because it's one thing buying your top from Fanatics or Europe NFL, but there's nothing like buying a top in the shop in Philadelphia and at the link. And that's just another reason to sign up to the trip. But I digress no more. There was a long conversation there about Nick Sirianni, and let me be clear. Mick is hard over, as are a few other members on the chat about Nick Sirianni. And Tony, between Tony and yourself, actually, I feel slightly ganged up on in terms of the love for Sirianni. But I remain unconvinced. I'm not totally out on Nick. Okay, and let me be clear on that. You can't take away from Nick Sirianni, the Eagles organization, the fans, or anyone who were in Phoenix on that night that we lost to the Chiefs. However, and it might be some recency bias, we are 3-7 in our last 10 games. And, when we talk about analytics, it's quite funny. I'm going to argue against my own argument here in that what happened in the game in New Orleans on Sunday, I can't get on Nick Sirianni's back for, because you live by the sword and you die by the sword. And, we have got to a Super Bowl as a result of the courage. As I said in the podcast a couple of weeks ago with Phil, we got to the Super Bowl as a result of the courage of Nick Sirianni and his convictions and the analytics and managing by the numbers, leading by the numbers. And I think that was what was one of the kind of final straws in the camel's back in the Atlanta game, when we were 4th and 3 and he wouldn't trust his offense, he wouldn't trust his defense as well. We were a field goal ahead. Why not just go for that 4th and 3? And that to me was just the final point, the catalogue of errors made by Sirianni over the course of the last couple of seasons. However, the real catalyst for me, and this is where I guess I have wavered slightly in my opinion this week, and it's not because of Jason Kelsey's podcast with his brother on New Heights and him talking about he trusts Sirianni and so on and so forth. Jason's paid to have these views. I think that the real reason that's made me waver is towards the end of last season, I thought Sirianni had lost the dressing room. And the beginning of this season, you saw a ray of light down in Sao Paulo where it looked as if the team rallied round them. And then last week, it just didn't seem as if the fight was there. Maybe that's changed in the last 168 hours, 1 week, whatever you want to call it. But me, like many other Eagles fans, have an opinion on Nick Sirianni that in the absence of a 12-5, a 13-4, a 14-3 season, it's going to be kind of quite hard to shift. And I would be absolutely delighted to be eating humble pie and sitting on here in 7 months' time, 6 months' time, 5 months' time, whatever it is, to say, do you know what, Uncle Tony, you were right. The doubters were wrong. I was wrong. Mick was wrong. But only time will tell, mate.
What do you? Really appreciate that. I mean, I'm not going to go over the things I said on the interview
Of course.
in any detail. You know where I stand on it. The record speaks for itself. I don't believe Howie and Lurie bring him back. If there isn't any, if they don't believe in him, I believe he does have the team. And nearly won a Super Bowl. You could argue based off a play, and then he's one of the best Eagles coaches of all time, right? So, and I think I said in the podcast in the WhatsApp group the other day, he has the highest or the second highest winning record percentage in the NFL of current coaches. So his record completely speaks for itself. I feel like, and I want Phil's opinion.
Sorry, Liam, can I stop you? I am going to defer to Phil here. Eric Ten Hag won the FA Cup. And we are drawing similarities here because
I don't think so.
No, we are. Eric Ten Hag won the FA Cup with Man United. Does that make Eric Ten Hag a great manager?
The Super Bowl is the Champions League or the World Cup. It's not the FA Cup.
Well, it is, but he lost it. And if you look at his recent record, over half a season of statistics, he is 30% of a win record.
And I put
so
that
you can go back as long as you want, but he's the head coach, Liam. He takes the decisions as to who remains as a coordinator and who doesn't. So whether it's Matt Patricia, whether it's Sean Desai, whether it's Johnson, it doesn't really matter. He's the guy that takes the calls. He has to live and die by it. Phil, is Eric Ten Hag the future of Manchester United?
Now you're asking, and I know what you're trying to say, where the victories lie and where the merits of the championships match up. I get the comparison there that in a way it's like we're arguing for past achievements. Where do they rank up? Each person's different in their opinion of how important a Super Bowl appearance is versus a Super Bowl defeat or victory. I think Sirianni is only in his business. Personally, I know it's going to kind of go away from it a bit, but I feel like Sirianni is in his position merely to avoid having all three coordinators gone and new for the season, and for him basically having one last chance to save his job. So I feel like doesn't really matter what we think of him right now. All it will matter is if he manages to achieve anything this season. If he doesn't, I don't believe he's going to be the head coach.
So I've got a question for you both, which is what I was going to ask you anyway, Phil, and your point just here has just backed it up for me. What, in the current dynamic and the media scrutiny that Nick Sirianni is getting at the moment, what can Nick possibly do to gain favor? Because I'm struggling to see it with all of the. I mean, if we do well, it's on the coordinators. If we do bad, it's on Nick. That's been the narrative in the media. That's been the narrative on the podcast. That's been a narrative in the news. He's just a cheerleader. Okay, well, if he's just a cheerleader, why are you blaming him for decision makings and calls? Now, I know this week he did, and he has come out and he's taken responsibility, which is one of the great things about Nick Sirianni. He's not afraid to face the fire and take slack when it may not have been his fault. Regardless of whether it was his fault this week or not, he always does that. He always fronts up. He always takes responsibilities. My question specifically is, what can Nick Sirianni do that is going to convince you guys that he's doing a good job? Because it doesn't seem like he can do anything in anyone's eyes at the moment. He's either at fault because he's making the calls, or we're winning in spite of him because he's just a cheerleader. I mean, you kind of have both.
He's not making the calls, but then he is making the calls, and I can't help but feel like the calls that he is making, or the impact that he is having, is more of a dictator clinging to power as the light is fading. He's trying to sort of go, look, I can do good. I'm going to take control of this moment. I'm going to do this thing, and it's going to turn out to be fantastic, and people are going to go, oh, that's what you could do. He's losing the amount of opportunities he has to show his worth. He has been stripped of power. He is not calling plays. He is interfering and calling plays when maybe he should or shouldn't do, more so than he needs to, because he is desperately trying.
Alan Moore said that it's the same as it's been at any other NFL team he's ever been the offensive coordinator. So this narrative of Nick Sirianni is interfering is bollocks, in my opinion. If your coordinator is coming out and saying that every other head coach he's worked under who doesn't call the plays does the same, then and as you rightly say, Phil, there's so little we could go on for Nick Sirianni to call it success, but we could lay every blame at his door, because as you rightly said, Tony, he is the head coach of the football team. Then shouldn't we be listening to what the players and the coaches and his staff are saying? Isn't that the only barometer we can judge it by?
Sorry, Phil, I'm going to jump in here. Nick Sirianni, there's no doubt in my mind that Nick Sirianni is a great leader of people. However, and there is a big but coming here. When you give autonomy to people, autonomy comes because of three things. One is that the person you're giving autonomy is capable to take it, they're willing to take it, and you're willing to gift them it. And if those three things aren't in place, then autonomy doesn't work. Now, one thing that Nick did this week, which I actually applaud him for, was he took accountability for the decisions that he'd taken. And, what happened in the New Orleans game, while he's been pilloried for it, I can stand behind it because we want our coach to be brave. It's the very nature of a Philly sports fan is, if you're going to go down, you go down fighting. And that's why I was so pissed off after the Atlanta game was because we went down with a whimper. He took a cop out route, and that really, really pissed me off. And that was the kind of real thing that called into question my belief about who Nick Sirianni was as a leader, what he stood for, how he trusted, etc. But it really called into question for me this thing about autonomy. And if Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio are going to be the future coordinators of our organisation, with Nick as the figurehead of the coaching organisation of the franchise, then Nick has to stand behind those three principles when he gives autonomy. Kellen Moore is capable, Vic Fangio is capable. You've got to assume that they're willing. Is Nick Sirianni willing to gift autonomy to these two guys? And I think the thing that's really called into question for me is meddling. So either you're going to gift the guys autonomy and you're going to hold them to account, or you're not going to give the autonomy and you're going to have the target on your own back. And if he continues to do what he's doing, which is to meddle and not truly give these guys autonomy, hold them to account, and hold them to account in a way internally that isn't overtly in the press, as he did with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley the week before, then I can't stand behind that kind of a leader. However, if he does what he's done this week, then actually the tide's turning for me. We won the game, and I think we were kind of lucky to win the game. Tony said that in your interview with him, Liam. Time will tell. But Nick, for the love of God, man, either give the autonomy and hold people to account, or meddle and take all accountability yourself. And when it goes wrong, you've got to live by the sword and die by the sword, mate.
Yeah, I suppose the overarching point to all that is when you are the head coach of your team, then the buck does follow you. My only final comment on that is I don't believe in a world where players and coordinators are stripped of all accountability or all fault. And I do feel like the Philadelphia media fan base it loves to moan and complain about individuals, and I do feel like he's getting a little bit too much slack based on what we've seen so far this year. But time will tell, Tony, as you said. So let's continue to monitor that situation. Right, there's only one thing for us to do before we sign off, and we'll just do a little bit of a preview for the Buccaneers game coming up this Sunday, which is our first watch along of the season, which we have talked about. By the way, quick shout out to Phil Mount Stevens last week on the podcast. He said the keys to victory for the Saints were defense will be key. Zero chance if we can't keep for a shootout. Run defense is massive for Kamara, so it'll be tough to keep him down. Keep the score low as possible early on. The Saints have benefited from 30 points lead at halftime. Take a whiff, Phil Mount Stevens, on predicting how we beat the New Orleans Saints, my friend. Well done.
It's not very often I get things right. I was quite happy with that.
Good man.
And my big take, just for the record, and Phil, once again, I doff my cap, you take your whiff. My big take last week was we had to win the turnover battle, which we lost miserably, but still won the game. So what the fuck,
If you'd have told me, Tony, that we were going to lose a turnover battle this week, I would have called a big loss. So I still think that's a good take, and the analytics certainly back you up on that. All right, Buccaneers preview. Let's go. So the Buccaneers are 2-1 for the season, the same as the Birds. They've just come off a embarrassing loss to the Denver Broncos. One that I did not predict in my score predictions this week. I don't think anyone predicted it after seeing the way that Baker Mayfield has played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not just this year, but also last year. He looks like the first round quarterback that he was drafted to be. I actually really like Baker Mayfield. I think he's a great quarterback. I love Jalen Hurts more, but if he was my quarterback, I wouldn't be disappointed. I think his talent is through the roof, and I think he's got the potential to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be a challenge for us this week. One thing to note, because the Broncos 7 sacks has been talked about a lot, and I talked about it in my interview with Tony, which was recorded yesterday, not today. Since then, we have confirmation that Vita Vea and their other offensive linemen and their 2 offensive linemen are fit and healthy and will play this Sunday. So I highly doubt, given what we've talked about on our pass rush, barring Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, that we are going to get to the Broncos 7 times, especially with their offensive line back fit and healthy. They rank 5th in pressures allowed while they're healthy, and the Eagles rank 25th in pressures. Interesting point. we ranked 29th in pressures before this week, so a slight improvement for the Birds on that stat line this week. Before we go to the keys to victory, on which I'll pull you in, Tony and Phil on, and also get your predictions for it. Baker Mayfield, as I've gone on about already, he's the 5th highest rated quarterback this year. He has 110 passer rating. Hurts is 19th, if you want to know, with an 85 passer rating. On the injury front, while they do have their fit and healthy offensive line, Anton Winfield Jr., their star quarterback, is DNP, did not practice with a foot injury. So he's trending similar to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith as to potentially will play this Sunday there. I believe Kalijah Kancey was a 1st round pick last year, because I remember in all of our draft analysis we did a year ago, we were looking at Kancey potentially for the Birds at one point. I never wanted him, but he's actually done pretty well since he's come into the league for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is also did not practice with a calf injury. He's a defensive tackle. And to be honest, well, Anton Winfield, if he doesn't play, I'll be happiest about that. But Bucky Irving looks like an absolute stud, the running back. He's already taking plays off Rashard White. I would think he will be the running back 1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers either this weekend if he plays, or certainly when he's fit again. I think he's a much better all-around back. He pretty much tore Alex Singleton's ACL with a cut this weekend just gone by. Seriously good player. He is also did not practice. Sorry, he was limited in practice today, slowly taking reps. He is limited, so we'll see what happens with Bucky Irving. With all that in mind, Phil, Tony, in terms of the keys to victory, what do you think they are for the Eagles this coming Sunday? Phil, I'll go to you first.
For me, and I echo the points that you've made about Baker being quite a likable player. I think I liked him when he was at the Browns. I felt bad when he was getting got a lot of slack and got shifted around to had a little bit of a resurgence at LA, went to Carolina, and has now settled in quite nicely at Tampa Bay. And I must admit that in a couple of leagues where I've been desperate for a quarterback pickup, he's been the one that I've managed to pick up from a lot of people, because some people were quite happy to let him go. But I guess maybe my bias towards him, but also my belief that he actually is a good quarterback, meant that he was sort of like that middle ground pickup where you can pick up a guy who's actually going to be starting and start well. But that being said, he is a sort of player who very much thrives on momentum. So you give him a good start, he is going to run right on you, and he is going to get confidence, and he is going to start slinging it around. So my key to victory versus the Bucs is very much picking up where we left off. Jalen Carter getting to the quarterback early, put him under a bit of pressure, throw him off his rhythm as much as we can in whichever way we can, whether that's on the edge or through the middle. It feels very much like getting to him in the first quarter is absolutely key. If we let him get into a rhythm, start throwing around the weapons that he's got, Godwin, Evans, and the running back, as you mentioned, Bucky Irving and Rashad White, if we allow him to get into a rhythm, it's just going to be a tough game. We've played them 2-3 times over the last 2 seasons, a couple of times in the playoffs, and it feels very much like a bit of an Achilles heel, the team that we will struggle against, and part of the reason that is it's in Tampa Bay. If we let the game get away from us, very much similar to the keys to victory for the Saints is don't let them get into rhythm early. Do whatever you can to disrupt it early on. And if we manage to do that, then we've definitely got a chance.
I'm going to go to mine quickly, Tony. I'm going to bring you in for yours because it's fresh in the mind. My key to victory is a combination of a few things. It's going to sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but I'm not. But it's actually not on defense. It's on offense. The Eagles have struggled to click into gear on a number of occasions this year, and they are probably going to be without AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. There is a huge step up needed without Covey as well for John Ross, who I should have mentioned in the news, has been elevated wearing number 38 to the team. The stats on John Ross and that number 38 are not very good for the Eagles. So let's hope he can overcome those jersey analytics that I know a number of podcasts love to go on about. We're going to need to see a lot from Jahan Dotson. We're going to see a lot from Paris Campbell. We're going to see a lot from John Ross. The Eagles cannot just rely on Hurts, Goddard, and Barkley for the entire game. There's going to be moments when these guys are going to need to be called upon. Now, Barkley's going to be incredibly important. We know that. Hurts is going to be incredibly important. We know that. Goddard is going to be incredibly important. We know that. But the opposition know that. The opposition are going to be targeting Hurts. They're going to be double teaming Goddard, and they're going to be packing the box for Barkley. They're going to know that these guys are the offensive weapons that can take the game away from the Bucs. For me, the key to victory is that some of these secondary depth pieces we have at wide receiver and tight end, even throw Calcaterra in there as well, are the key to victory for the Birds. We have to get out of the blocks faster. We have to score some points. I know that's a few different things there, Tony. I hope it didn't take away from any of your key points for victory.
Yeah, thunder completely stolen, Liam. I thought for a minute you had, but actually you spoke about the offense. So Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Bucs, is a defensive genius. Okay, so he is going to find a way to bring pressure to that offense, to throw us off our rhythm, and we've got limited weapons in order to make plays and make points. So for me, there's two key things. One is efficiency on offense. So we were really efficient actually on offense against New Orleans, and it beggared belief that we got to the end of the third quarter, we hadn't scored a point. The amount of yards that we put up against what is a pretty decent New Orleans defense and not scored any points is just mind blowing. However, efficiency in that offensive territory is absolutely key. So we have to convert those opportunities into points. But let me just take a slightly different angle and just touch on, and you touched on the kind of secondary and offense, Liam. Let me touch on the secondary and defense. Against Denver, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 16 first downs. 11 of them were passing first downs. Only 4 of them were rushing, which is quite interesting. One of them was a penalty first down. Cade Otton, who is the Tampa Bay tight end, he's having a woeful season. So there's not a lot of things that are happening in the slot and in the immediate forefront of the secondary for Tampa Bay just now, which means Quinion has to have a good game. Darius Slay has to have a good game. They've got to shut down Godwin and Mike Evans. So there's not going to be a lot, I think, happens on the rush, particularly if Carter and Davis shut down the way that they were shutting down, which actually means that, we're kind of looking at guys like Avonte Maddox, potentially Cooper DeJean, Darius Slay, Quinion Mitchell to have big games. And if they can close down those guys, maybe we don't have to be as efficient on offense as you've been talking about and I've been suggesting. So the kind of key battle for me is just behind the line back, just in front of the secondary. If we win that battle, then I think we win the game.
I love it. And this feels like another good poll. So we've got Phil on getting pressure early to Baker, who can beat you through the air with those wide receivers. We've got Tony, the secondary, locking them down because we hope there won't be much going in the rush game because of our interior defensive linemen, and we're going to need those guys to step up against one of the best 1-2 tandems in the league in Evans and Godwin. And by the way, Godwin is on fire this year. He's averaging 85 yards and a touchdown per game, which is good because I have him in a lot of my fantasy teams. But that beside, and then finally for me, it's offensive efficiency, as you mentioned as well, Tony, and those depth players coming up and showing up with some of our big guns gone. So let's get a little vote out on that as to what we think the keys are for the game as well. All right, folks, we are at 2 hours and 5 minutes. My bottle of red wine is depleted. But it's been a very good podcast. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Tony, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. For the 2 hours I had Phil, and for the hour and 46 minutes we had Tony for his technical issues. Before we leave, can I get your score predictions for the game this Sunday?
It's a good shout, actually. I feel like it's going to be quite a high scoring one as opposed to the Saints one. So I'm going to go for a 32-24 win versus the Bucks.
Okay. Tony?
Quite unlike me, I'm your stereotypical pessimistic Scottish guy. However, I think we get a 2-score win this weekend.
Interesting. I like that. You're both going to be shocked by this. I think the Birds lose this game this week against the Bucks. I think the Lane Johnson, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith trilogy of being out could really hurt us. And I don't think it will be a season affecting loss away in Tampa against a very good offense and defense. I think it's gonna be a tight game. I think the Birds just lose it, and you've no idea how much it pains me to say that because I never predict the Birds to lose. But I do think with the injuries at the moment, it's going to be an uphill battle. All right, guys, go on, Tony.
Well, one of us is going to take a victory lap next week.
Exactly. I love it. All right, Bird Gang, thanks for listening. And we've been the British and Irish Eagles. I look forward, and Phil looks forward to seeing you at Passion and Gavin this Sunday, 6 p.m. for the Eagles watch along against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I hope I'm completely wrong and the Eagles win this game. I hope that Jalen has an incredible game. I hope the defensive line continue to click and that our offensive weapons stand out. And who knows, maybe Nick Sirianni will make a good decision. We'll wait and see. All right, go Birds, and we love you.
Fly Eagles, fly.